Hey everybody, watch this review here with 2010 in review. A comprehensive look at the year 2010, at least in terms of action figures. I've been meaning to do a video on this for a while. It'll basically incorporate a lot of the stuff that other people sort of did at the start of the year, where they did their top lines, top figures, and everything. But I wanted to do it in all one video, just to save space or whatever. One gigantic video. Just to keep me from deviating too much, I'll be following a sort of rough schedule where first I'll be doing some general comments on 2010 across the board. Then I'll be discussing a few of the top lines, just the biggest stuff. After which I'll jump directly to the top 10 figures of 2010, followed by what I feel to be, well, at least what was my biggest disappointment for the year. After which I'll reveal what I feel to be the worst toy line of 2010, and it's probably not who you think, or at least in my opinion it's not. And then I'll be discussing, just a few major toy lines that are ongoing. I'll have some other toy lines that are over at this point in the comments/details box below, if you're interested in that. And finally, I'll be discussing some of the things I'm looking forward to in 2011. Of course, some of those things I already picked up at this point, so yeah, it's the problem with doing a video a little bit on the late side, but without any further ado, 2010, yeah. Now, 2010 was, I guess, kind of an iffy year in collecting. I mean, it was marked by some pretty significant price hikes. DC Universe Classics went up by $2 for a lot of retailers. Marvel Universe went up $1, then another $1 at some retailers, specifically my Target and Walmart. I think Toys R Us also went up. I guess those price hikes also sort of carried over to like completely unrelated lines, because you'd see a lot of newer stuff for the 4-inch scale also coming out at $8, like the Prince of Persia line, Avatar: The Last Airbender, a whole bunch of others. So, I mean, pretty nutty there. There were also some pretty significant delays. If you remember the Marvel Select Juggernaut, I believe he was originally slated for like a summer 2010 release or something, then he kept getting pushed back until he eventually ended up coming out in 2011. Then you had all those Matty blow-ups, including the infamous Battle Cat fiasco, where not only did the site totally like flip or whatever, but they didn't even have enough stock in hand to fulfill the orders they did take. And they did do a second release, though, back, I think it was Cyber Monday. And then a few other lines, like the Marvel Legends, just didn't really have any presence. There were some upsides, though. We got a few cool new lines. We also had some other lines sort of branched out, like with Revel Tex. But on the whole, not really a spectacular year. Now, I guess jumping on to the biggest toy lines of 2010. 3 lines really seemed to stand out in 2010, the first being the Marvel Universe line. Actually, I have a whole read-up on that. They had a very strong showing in 2010 thanks to a number of factors, like the near absence of the Marvel Legends line, which kind of killed internal competition, continued support from 3¼ inch tie-ins, or 3 3/4, like the Iron Man 2 line, and some pretty cool improvements to quality, like the paint really seemed to have a nice uptick in 2010. Now, they also started to, although they have always been recycling, they started to recycle a bit smarter. Dr. Doom and the Ultron, they share the same arms and legs, but looking at the 2 figures, you'd just never see the commonalities unless you just really look closely. The Thanos and Marvel Universe Juggernaut are kind of the same in regards to basically the same sculpt, but I mean, it's a lot better in terms of just how they're recycling. However, a few problems kind of continue to plague the line. For one thing, it's just the price. Another thing is they're still recycling some of the earliest molds. I mean, obviously they're touching them up, but the same molds that came out in Wave 1 are still popping up now. Which is a complete downer, because those don't even have that much articulation, like they're missing a lot of essential points. And there aren't even really great looking sculpts. And something like that's kind of doubly annoying, just given the fact that you are paying a bit more for essentially the same figure that came out like 2 years ago. On the whole, though, the line definitely has improved, and we've gotten a lot of really cool stuff with other cool items to look forward to. Next, we have the DC Universe Classics. I mean, kind of been a pretty significant player for some time now. And the sculpts definitely also are really getting a lot cooler. The one kind of downside at this point is they're starting to recycle some of the Collect and Connects, starting with the Kilowog and Brimstone, whose molds are basically the same, that later went over to Validus. And although, you know, it is a really cool sculpt, I mean, you kind of do want to see something different, or at least not see it pop up so often. But some very decent character selection for 2010. And everything's starting to look a lot more dynamic. I mean, at one point, a lot of the figures on the shelf just kind of look the same, and a lot of people complain that they're just like heavily recycling, but I mean, it's no longer quite the case. The other major line 2010 is one that a lot of people probably weren't that familiar with before the year, and that would be the Revoltech line, which has really branched out and started to cover Western properties, including the now, I guess, infamous Woody, who's very popular on a great many sites for these crazy eyes. These crazy, fully adjustable eyes. I'm sure you've seen this figure quite a number of times, but they've also done Batman. They have a new Iron Man on the way, in addition to doing a whole bunch of classic horror icons like they did the Alien. They've also done a Jason, as well as a Predator, although I think the Predator's not out yet. Can't remember. But I mean, yeah, definitely doing a lot of really cool, really exciting stuff that is branching out and connecting a bit better with Western audiences than their primarily old, like, Sentai and anime-related stuff. And now, moving right along to possibly the most anticipated segment, my top 10 toys for 2010. Because if somebody's watching it, they're probably going to think, why didn't such and such make the list? There is a very good reason why some items won't be making it. And that's because I haven't picked them up yet, and I refuse to say something's a top 10 if I don't even own the stupid thing or haven't really seen it in person. So before I do that, I'm going to do the top 10 figures that I haven't picked up and kind of do want to pick up. Obviously, I won't be buying all of them, but just to give you some idea of the other cool stuff that came out in 2010. Starting off at number 10, we have the Revoltech Genobreaker. Now, Revoltech has done a lot of really crazy stuff from properties all over the place. The Genobreaker is a robot from an anime called Zoids. I think it was the Chaotic Century one. Now, it's a really neat figure. The character was one of my favorites, but there's something that I don't quite like about the look of it, in addition to it being just a really small figure. But the largest thing probably keeping me back from picking this up is just the price tag. This figure, the cheapest you can find it now, and that's on discount, I think it's like 60 or 70% off. And it's for like 1,980 yen over at Ame, which would work out to be like 24 or 25 bucks. Not a bad price in and of itself, but you have to remember when you're importing stuff, it does cost quite a bit. Now, because of the size of the package, they can only ship the stuff via EMS, which works out to another 28 bucks, so 50 bucks for this figure. Genobreaker, I love you, but I don't love you that much. Sorry. On the flip side, though, I should mention that it's still 20 bucks cheaper than Big Bad Toy Store has it listed for at the moment. Now at number 9, we have the DC Universe Classics Modern Starman. Not a character that I'm really familiar with or anything, but he's got a really neat character design. I haven't picked him up yet, though, just because the wave hasn't dropped in my area yet. Probably will eventually, otherwise I'll just end up picking up some of the figures online. Validus isn't a Collect and Connect I really care about. In a similar vein, we also have the Martian Manhunter. I mean, he's probably not one of the most dynamic characters for the whole DC Universe Classics, but I mean, he's probably just one of the characters I was most looking forward to eventually coming out. Very cool, somewhat underappreciated character. Yeah, I didn't really take time to adjust the stand here or anything, but bear with me. Camera angle is going to kind of suck for this video. Number 7, we have the Marvel Universe Galactus. A very impressive, very huge figure. There's also an even cooler looking Dark Galactus variant. Now, although I wouldn't mind owning this, I mean, well, first off, I have the Marvel Legends one, which I'm pretty satisfied with. Second of all, I mean, it's just like, as much as I like the figure, I mean, it's large enough that storage does become an issue, and I mean, as mentioned, I already have a pretty decent Galactus, just kind of iffy on paying $70 for another one, but if I do see the Dark Galactus in stores, I might end up buying him. The normal one probably won't cave on. Now at number 6, I think I'm on 6 now, we have the Iron Man 2 drones. Now I did pick up the ground assault one, but unfortunately, like, a lot of them just never appeared in my area, and I really would have loved to use these guys for army building. They aren't really spectacular figures in and of themselves, but they do look really great as like a whole troop. So at number 7, the Iron Man 2 drones. Oh wait, that's actually number 6. Yeah, so at number 6, the Iron Man 2 drones. At number 5, this one should be no big surprise to anybody. It's the new Marvel Legends Deadpool. I've really not seen any of these in my area, and I don't think they have them listed on the website. I think I tried going to Toys R Us and just having them order it internally, but they only had like the variant and some of the other packs that they could look for. This one, really want to pick up. Probably would definitely be on the top 10, but haven't gotten around to holding it or buying it. Warpath, also very cool. So, yeah, the Marvel Legends Deadpool. Number 4, we have the Ultra Humanite from the Walmart exclusive wave. Ultra Humanite's sort of a kind of under-recognized villain. He was basically replaced by the Lex Luthor in terms of Superman rogues, and vastly outshined in terms of guerrilla villains by Gorilla Grodd and even Monsieur Mala from the, well, Doom Patrol Rogues Gallery. But a very neat figure. I do hope to pick it up some point, but this one I will likely buy loose just because the wave doesn't really thrill me that much. Although, famous last words, I have ended up buying a few waves where I thought I wouldn't. But number 4, Ultra Humanite, DC Universe Classics. At number 3, we have the repack, I guess kind of the ATST from the Target exclusive sets. Now this one also included 2 Snowtroopers and 8 ATST driver. A very neat figure. I stupidly passed up on it the 1 or 2 times I saw it in stores, just because a lot of stuff at Target seems to end up on clearance. I really shouldn't have, but yeah, very neat item. At number 2, we have the Revoltech Gamera. Now, Gamera is a character who kind of doesn't have as much impact in the West as Godzilla in terms of fame, but very neat turtle-like monster. It's kind of a hero. They also released a Geos for it as well. Also very nice. These are Revoltechs, by the way. I will probably pick this up at some point, though. And I wouldn't mind picking up a few Gaios. It was Gaios, not Geos. But unfortunately, you know, it's just the cost of importing and everything. Just check out those cool, like, rocket things. Yeah, very neat accessories. And at number 1, the absolute toy to buy for 2010 that I didn't buy, we have the new Star Wars AT-AT. This is just a spectacular figure. I recently favorited Mandalorian 30's review on the figure. I mean, I stupidly passed on this back in December, back when, no, it was November, when Target had a $20 off voucher for this, so I could have picked it up for $80, but besides the price, it's a ginormous figure. It's 2 feet tall. And there's no way you can conceivably store the stupid thing, which was probably the biggest thing holding me back from picking it up. So at some point you do want to put things away, and something like this you could never ever put any place. You'd either have to have it on display or just have some generous shelving someplace. But yeah, this is the #1 figure I would have loved to pick up, but didn't. Probably won't at this point, because I think it's not even in stores. A very, very neat item. But yeah, now that we're done with the top 10 things I didn't buy, here are the top 10 things I did pick up. There are a few other items I probably wouldn't mind adding to the list, but at number 10 we have the DC Universe Classics Blue Beetle. He's significant for a number of ways, although probably not a massively impressive figure in and of himself. He's the first DC Universe Classic, to the best of my knowledge, to include double joints at both the knees and elbows. In addition to just having like a really heavily detailed body, and he's at the new teen scale. So I mean, it's definitely a pretty big leap up for what they had been doing previously for some of them for the line. At number 9 we have the Build-A-Figure from that wave, or Collect and Connect, Trigon. He was a character I was really looking forward to, but when he came out, wasn't nearly as impressed. Just a few really small problems with him, like don't like how the hands are like sculpted and everything, and just not a lot of paint, but all the same, he's a very awesome looking figure, and definitely the sort of thing you like to see as a Collect and Connect, because he is a pretty epic villain. Now, at number 8, we have the DC Universe Classics Superboy, a figure I was really excited for, who came out looking really great. I mean, although a lot of it's probably just pretty standard, the jacket definitely looks really awesome, and you know, the glasses help compensate for the fact that a lot of the characters' eyes for the series just don't seem to have a lot of life to it, so he definitely comes out looking like a really awesome figure all around. The only downside to him, again, is just the fact that the movement is a little bit crimped when you're trying to get the leg up in the front. At number 7, we have the Iron Man 2 comic series War Machine. Now, this was probably the figure that most made me sit up and pay attention to the 4-inch scale. This is a spectacular looking figure with some really awesome accessories here. Now, the neat thing is the guns do just twist around the back and everything, and you know, these do pop out. A very awesome paint job. Only downside to this figure is the way that they implemented the leg joints, because they don't really do as much as they possibly could, but really great figure all around. At number 6, I'd probably put the Retroaction DC Superheroes Lex Luthor. Now, the Retroaction line, well, at least for the DC Superheroes, is relatively recent, but I mean, they've come out with some pretty cool looking stuff. The sort of generic body mold they use in the style of the old Megos definitely works best for Lex Luthor, considering, you know, he's just an ordinary guy. He's not some pumped up super muscular dude like a lot of other heroes and villains. And you know, the costume just looks really cool and brings back a lot of memories, the challenge of the Super Friends and everything. Very nice display piece, even if you can't do a ton with the figure. Number 5, we have the Marvel Universe Juggernaut. This was a figure that a lot of people were pretty excited over. It's actually not the first time that Juggernaut's been in the 4-inch scale, but it's definitely the best. Previously, he was available through the Showdown series, but it just didn't have the size and bulk that this figure has. The only real problem with this one is just that the paint's a little crappy in places where, like around this mid-torso, it doesn't look as nice. Other than that, you know, really cool figure with a fair amount of articulation. Up next at number 4, we have the Spider-Man Fiercest Foes Rhino. Now, this is a figure that I'd actually be tempted to put at number 1 just because it's such an impressive outing. Only real downsides is the fact it doesn't have much articulation, but he can get the sort of iconic running pose and stuff. The head has a good range of motion where it can go all the way up, so you know, definitely a really neat figure. The other downside, besides the lack of articulations, like no matter how you pose this figure, these huge obnoxious ball joints are visible. But paint, detail, and everything right across the board is just really solid on this. although some of that's just the use of color. At number 3, we have the Marvel Universe World War Hulk. Definitely the most impressive Marvel Universe figure to date. Just an incredible paint app on the body portions and on some of the armor. Not so much on the sort of leather and wood portions of the figure. Could have really used a nice wash there, but it's got a really spectacular amount of articulation, looks like an entirely new sculpt and everything, and just all around a really neat figure. The only downside, of course, is that the weapons don't really hold well, and it could really use some paint on the accessories because it just looks like cheap plastic on the sheath and everything. But yeah, very, very solid figure and definitely must get. At number 2, our runner-up for the best figure of the year, we have the Masters of the Universe Classic Battle Cat. Definitely a figure that a lot of people are looking forward to, especially myself, and something that I doubt Mattel could have even predicted the demand for. Just a really awesome figure in terms of sculpt and everything. Paint-wise, not as cool, but the color is really solid. It's got this kind of crappy gloss to it, which is kind of chintzy, but a fair amount of articulation. The joints might not go as far as you'd like them to, but just for the amount of joints, it's really cool. And again, really awesome sculpt and decent figure all around. At number 1, we have, with just a hint of blatant bias, the DC Universe Classics Darkseid, the Collect and Connect from Wave 12. Very impressive figure, decent size. I mean, originally I kind of didn't like the fact that he was just so large, but a lot of people pointed out the fact that he's been drawn millions of different ways throughout his appearances, and since then I'm okay with it. Really impressive figure, awesome head sculpt. Upper body's not as cool as the lower body just because there's not as much paintwork and stuff, and the joints are more visible, but we have a good amount of paint toning here on the tunic, or the lower portion, then down the legs. And because of the way they actually worked in the ball joints for his hips, he actually has inward motion a fair amount, which is a really neat touch. Not sure how useful that would ever be, but I guess if you wanted to get a good pouty look for the character, and he's always pouting. The other neat thing is just the fact that you have that awesome concealed point over here where they have it at the upper calf. Just a really impressive figure, and I do like the fact that the whole tunic sort of bends at natural angles and everything. You just can't sit down though, which is something of a downer, but definitely my selection for the number 1 figure of 2010.